Good morning. I'm Steve Gustitis, and this is Walkabout. In this video, I'll share with you how I hike alone in the backcountry with type 1 diabetes. All that's coming up right after this. Before we start the video, if you're a type 1 diabetic, I am not suggesting that you hike alone in the backcountry, nor am I suggesting that you not hike alone. I'm simply sharing my story with you to show you how I confidently and safely manage my diabetes when I'm out far from home in the backcountry alone. If you're not a type 1 diabetic, but were curious about the topic of the video, let me give you an overview of type 1 diabetes and how it could potentially affect the backcountry hiker. Type 1 diabetics cannot produce the hormone insulin in their bodies. Insulin is necessary to extract fuel from the bloodstream in the way of glucose and transfer it into the cells for fuel and for energy. Consequently, type 1 diabetics must inject themselves with insulin each day in order to satisfy their body's need for this very important hormone. Too little insulin in the body causes too much glucose in the blood. That's called hyperglycemia. Over time, hyperglycemia will pretty much damage every organ in a type 1 diabetic's body. On the other hand, too much insulin causing too little glucose in the bloodstream is called hypoglycemia. When a diabetic is suffering from hypoglycemia, their cells are starved of energy. Most importantly, their brain cells are starved. And when that happens, the diabetic's ability to reason, to think, to make decisions is critically impaired. As a result, hypoglycemia is the danger that type 1 diabetics face in the backcountry, especially when they're alone. If you're a type 1 diabetic and you feel comfortable sharing, add something in the comment section about how you deal with your type 1 diabetes when you're out on trail. So for the type 1 diabetic, monitoring their blood glucose levels out on trail is critical to avoiding hypoglycemia. For years, I used the finger prick method for measuring my blood glucose level. The finger prick method uses a lance to prick the finger. You get a very, very small amount of bleeding. You put that blood from your finger onto a test strip that is connected to a measuring device, which then measures your glucose levels so you know what your number is when out on trail. The problem with the finger prick method is that it does not monitor blood glucose levels continuously. Hypoglycemia can really sneak up on a type 1 diabetic, and they might not even realize what's going on, maybe until it's too late. Again, that's the big problem with using the finger prick method of keeping an eye on those glucose levels. In recent years, I've moved to a blood glucose measuring system which uses a subcutaneous centering device and a transmitter which is connected then to an app on my phone. The device that I'm currently using is called the Dexcom 6. The Dexcom app on my phone can be set with audible alarms to let me know when my blood glucose levels are getting below normal before I start suffering from hypoglycemia, but gives me enough time to stop, get something to eat, and get my blood glucose levels back up to normal so I can get back on trail. So I have to keep my phone fully charged. When I'm out on trail during the day, I keep my phone in my pocket with the app running so I have quick access to the app to see what my blood glucose levels are at any given time. At night, again, I keep the phone fully charged, but then I keep it next to my head. So if the audible alarm is triggered, it'll wake me up. I have candy there ready to go to satisfy my need for sugar, to avoid that hypoglycemia, to get my levels back up to normal so I can get back to sleep and get ready for the next day's hike. Another important factor for me to consider when I'm out on trail alone is the dosage of insulin that I take each day. See, when you're out hiking all day, that long-term aerobic activity acts just like insulin does in the body. So I have to adjust the injection level down to prevent my body from getting too much insulin, which will again trigger hypoglycemia and put me in that very dangerous situation of impaired judgment and impaired decision making. And especially at night, the full day of aerobic activity, that keeps your metabolism going at night. And again, your body is still burning the fuel. So again, if you're not careful about how much insulin that you've taken during the day, at night when you're asleep, you could quickly go into hypoglycemia. Now, even though I rely upon that Dexcom device and app to keep good track of my blood glucose levels, I always carry my finger stick equipment as a backup, just in case my technology happens to fail. And lastly, you may be wondering, why would a type 1 diabetic put themselves at risk hiking alone, deep in the backcountry, and far away from any help? Well, the answer to that question is actually very simple. It's because I love to do it. So I hope today's video was helpful to you. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to become part of the Walkabout community. I'll see you next time here at Walkabout.